Thank you so much for tuning in to 60 Codes in 60 Minutes. I'm Nysa Garg, your instructor for this hour. Just a friendly reminder, do not forget to click on the link in the description box below and donate to our fundraiser so that we're able to procure more and more oxygen cylinders and just help people who are suffering through very critical health problems and people who are very needy. So yeah, don't forget to donate. And now let's get into the course.
So in today's course, I'll be basically teaching you how to make your very own website's front end part. So that will include me teaching you how to code in HTML and CSS. So what is HTML really? HTML is basically the structure of your website. So in HTML, you would basically include all of your images, your text, what all, like the placement of your text and your lists, your tables, and basically what all components there are on your website, they will all be a part of your HTML. So all of the different components that, okay, I'm gonna add a picture over here. I will have a text over here. All of that part would come under HTML. Now, you can basically code HTML in any text editor. So like for example, I have you have Atom, you have Sublime Text 3. I generally like to code in VS Code, which is Visual Studio Code. Then you could also code HTML in your normal Notepad or in Notepad++, which is another version of Notepad. So yeah, you just need one text editor on which you could code HTML. So HTML basically involves us having this boilerplate. So every HTML code basically starts off with this very simple code, which is called the boilerplate. Now this code basically has our HTML tag, our head tag, our meta tag, which you don't need to like delve into right now because this is kind of advanced, which you don't need to know about. Then you have your title tag, then you have your body tag, and then you have your HTML tag again. Now, okay, guys, just copy this thing because this is gonna be the starting of your HTML. Also, normally, if you just type HTML on your classic text editor and hit enter, you'll probably get the boilerplate. Now, in the previous slide, I said tags. Whenever I was saying, sorry about that, when I was saying that this is an HTML tag, this is a head tag, this is a title tag. What did I mean? What did I meant then by tag? Now, tag is basically the heart and the soul of HTML. HTML is made using tags. The way to write the tag is you basically write two, like one greater than and one smaller than sign, and then just enclose the name of the tag inside them. So let's say my name of the tag is table tag. So I'll just put one greater than, one smaller than sign, and then put table between them. And there are two kinds of tags in HTML. One is the starting tag, one is the closing tag. Now, starting tag and closing, the only difference between starting tag and a closing tag is that starting tag does not have this slash in front of the name. Okay, and closing tag does. So literally all the code which we want like for you to see on the screen, we put it in between the starting and the closing tag. So like for example, if you want a paragraph of text, then you'll put the text between the paragraph tags. So the starting paragraph tag, the ending paragraph tag, and in between that you'll put the paragraph text. Now these are some fundamental tags. Title tag is basically the tag which kind of defines the title of the page. Now, what is the title of the page? You open any website out there. So let's say I open anything, paper, let's say, and now I open Wikipedia. Paper dash Wikipedia is the title of this website. Now this is the title tag. This is what the title tag does. And now guys, I'll show you a quick trick. Just press Ctrl Shift I, and this would take you to the console of the page. You could also just right click and go to inspect. And if I want to change the title of this page, I could directly go into the head, because if you remember, title tag comes between the head tags. So I'll go into the head. You can see title over here, and I could easily write Nysa is the best. And now, if you see, I've changed the title of the page. But obviously, this is not permanent. As soon as I reload the page, it will come back to its default title. Okay, great. Now, this is the body tag. Now, between the body tag comes all of the text, and all of the elements, images, and whatever you see on your web page comes between the body tag. Okay. Now, there are 7 tags which basically helps you write text in HTML, and the 7 tags goes as H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6, and then P tag. Now, H1 to H6 tags are basically heading tags. So H1 being the biggest heading tag, H1 being the biggest heading tag, where H6 being the smallest heading tag. And all of the tags between them, between H1 and H6, are basically follow a gradient method. That means H2 is basically smaller than H1, but H2 is bigger than H3, and H3 is bigger than H4, but smaller than H2, like that. Okay, now as you can see over here, I've written H1 is the biggest heading tag, H2 is smaller heading tag, which means it's smaller than H1, and then H6 is the smallest heading tag. Now, the P tag, which was the 7th tag I said for writing any text, is the paragraph tag. So whenever you're writing any paragraph in your in your web page, you basically enclose it in P tag. Now, as you can see, all of this comes under the P tag. Okay, great. Now, over here, as you can see, I've enclosed my hello in not only the P tag, but also the B tag. Now, the B tag over here is a formatting tag. That means it formats the text. B tag over here is basically adding a bold format to the text. So in the next slide, you'll see that hello will be printed out as bold. And the same goes by as I. I is also a formatting tag, which is basically, it basically converts the text to italic. So whatever text is between the I tag becomes italic. Then we have the U tag, which is also a formatting tag, which converts whatever text is between it to basically have an underline to it. Okay, great. So now let's look at the next page. So this is basically a picture of the result of this code. So as you can see, this is the biggest heading, which is the result of this line. This is H1 and this is H2, and H2 is obviously smaller than H1, and this is H6. So you can see how different, like how major the size difference is between H1 and H6. And then this is the P tag. This is hello in bold, which is because of this B tag. And then we have by in italic here. And we have sure with an underline. Now, why did hello and bye come in the same line, but sure come in the second line? That's because we have a tag called the BR tag over here, which is called the break ruler or break line tag. Sorry about that. Which basically is a sole ending tag. That means it does not have a starting tag. And if you put this, everything after this tag will go to the next line. So as you can see, even though I've written hello and bye in two different lines, they still came together because they're in the same p tag, because the p tag hasn't ended yet, because I've not put the ending p tag still. But even though sure and bye are in the same p tag, because the p tag ending tag isn't here, this br tag basically makes the sure go to the next line. Okay. Now we come to lists. We use lists in many things. We use lists in grocery grocery shopping. We use lists in when we're prepping for a test. We use lists in making notes, etc. Now, there are two types of lists. One is ordered lists, which basically tells us, okay, this comes first, this comes second, this comes third, which are numbered. But there are also some lists which are not numbered, which are called unordered lists. Now, these lists, how to write these lists? The way to write these lists is, first, we declare a tag. This is for unordered list, okay? We declare a tag. Now for unordered lists, we use UL, so unordered list. So we use UL, and then inside this, we want to put list items. So L stands for lists and I stands for items. So our first list item is these, second is R, third is pointers. So that's why this is printed out. Now, if you want to basically make an ordered list, we basically follow the same rule, just that instead of UL, we use OL, which is ordered list. Okay. Now we come to divs and spans. So divs and spans are basically used to divide your page into segments. Now both of them are used to divide the page into segments. So why do we need two different tags to do the same function? Now, even though they do the same function, they are used in very different situations, and I'll show you why. So firstly, as you can see, they basically use a very similar way. So div tag, then code in between it, span tag, and then code in between it. Now I'll show you in how different situations we use div and span. So I'll open my VS Code and I'll create another file. So I'll create another project. Great. Oh, okay, great. So I'll create another file called main.html. Yes. And so guys, .html is very, very, very crucial because that's an extension which the computer looks for to basically determine if the file is an HTML file or not. So if the file has the extension .html, it basically tells the computer that, okay, this file will include HTML code. Okay. So now I'm gonna basically get my boilerplate. HTML5. Great. Okay, so now in here I would want to write div students of unified relief urges you to donate, and then outside the div I would want to write donate now. Every penny counts. Okay, and now I would do the same with span. So students of unified relief urges you to donate now. Every penny counts. Okay. Now I would just open with okay, the simple way out. This is just by going to the page and then. Okay, now what difference do you see over here? The difference you see over here is that over here, okay, students of Unified Relief urges you to donate. Donate now, every penny counts. Till here is our div. And then from here, a span starts. So div is basically a block separator, whereas span is inline. So over here, this was inside the div, this was outside the div. So as soon as the div ended, the text editor directly took you to the next line. But when it came to the span, it started off with the same line. Because it's an inline block, inline separator. So for example, if I would have put a div over here instead of a span, div. Now everything is on the next line. So that is the difference between div and span. So normally, most of the time you basically use div to separate, but whenever it comes to inline separation, when you want to basically, let's say I want to change the color of only every over here, that's when you use span and not div. Because if I would have put a div, if I would have enclosed this in a div, every would have come to the next line and penny counts would have come after every. But if I would have put a span around of it, yeah, then it'll remain in the same line. I might as well just show you how that works. So div donate now, span. So I want to, let's say, make this red. Every penny counts. Now, if I do this for div, cool. And so I'll just put CSS on this. Now, you guys, I'll explain you what CSS is, but just don't see this. I'm just changing the color of FT right now. So style color red. I'm gonna explain this later on to you guys. Now you see what happened. Because I put a span over here, every remain in the same line, but because I put a div over here, every move to the next line. So that's the difference between div and span. Now we come to forms. So forms are extremely important in most of the websites. You use forms in a lot of websites, like as you can see in Instagram for sign up, for basically filling in, let's say, your information or anything. Forms are extremely important. And to make a form in HTML, you basically use a form tag which has an action method, action, and a method attribute. So action attribute basically denotes where to send the data. So where is the data going? And method attribute basically denotes how is the what type of a request is coming. Okay, and then we have input type text. So this basically takes in an input of text. Then we have input type date, takes an input date. Input type color takes an input of color. Input type file takes an input of file. Input type checkbox basically takes a input of checkbox. So this is basically how this looks. So this is for text, date, color, checkbox. So I might as well show you how this looks in a real text editor. Okay, where to send the data? Right now, nowhere, because we're not collecting data. I'm just gonna show you how this looks. So I'm gonna leave that blank. Method also I'm gonna leave it blank because I'm not taking any request in. Okay, and voila, we have our text, we have our date of birth, or not date of birth, sorry, just date. We have a color, and we have our file. Now, since all of this is in one line, and we have a checkbox, sorry. Since all of this is in one line, what we could do to actually make it look like this is we could just put a BR tag after this. And it shall work. And here you go. So you have your text, your date, color, file, checkbox. Okay. Now, forms, inside forms, if you see right now, we're just taking input, right? But how would we tell the person that what input are we taking? So over here in a text, we have so many things we could write, but what do we want the user to write? we want the user to write the name, their father's name, their mother's name, their school name. So that's where we use something called label. Okay, and so here we're basically using label for username, and for username that means for equals username. That means over here, as you can see, the ID of this input, that means a unique key, something which is unique to this input, is an ID which is called username, and that's what we're passing here for the for. So this label basically is for this input, and so this username is for this input. Now the same goes for this to password. And then we have another kind of input which is called submit. So this basically helps you submit your form. So let's just, okay, I'm gonna use a lot of PRs just to kind of add a separation between the forms. Cool. And just copy pasting this. Oh. Removing this part, removing this part. Okay, now let's. So as you can see over here, we have a username and password, and yeah, the password has these dots. That's because the type is password, as you could see over here. And then we have a required field in the username part, which basically, if we don't enter anything in the username box, in the username input box, it will show us a prompt. Okay, great. Now, how do we link any page to our web page? So how do we link anything to our web page? The way to do that is through anchor tags. So it's quite straightforward. We have an anchor tag, which basically an attribute called href. So href basically shows us where after clicking on this link, after clicking on this tag, where does the what happens, where does the page go to, or yeah, what basically happens. And then this is basically what you see in the web page. So let's copy this. Okay, and I'll just put an empty tag here, empty inverted commas here, and over here I'm gonna write donate. So as you can see, the thing donate came, and it's a clickable link. Now let's say if I want to attach this link or this button kind of a thing to a fundraiser. So, and this is our link. So I have the link now, and I'm gonna just paste the link over here. Control S, and now over here, if I'll reload, press on this, it takes me to our fundraising campaign. Great. Now, this is your first project. It's kind of a project which you could do at home and kind of brush up on your skills, just take a screenshot and yeah. So that's it for HTML. Now let's move on to CSS. So CSS is basically the we basically use CSS to beautify our page, to basically add color and alignment and sizing of everything. That's basically CSS. So HTML is the structure of a whole page, what all is there, the text which is there and everything, and CSS is basically making everything look prettier. We have in CSS we have ID two kinds of selectors. Now selectors are things which basically helps us select the component in HTML. So we have then we have a property. So basically what do you want to change about that object or about that component in our HTML? So what do you want to change about it? And then comes the value. But to what do you want to change? So if I, let's say, want to change the color of my text to red, my selector will be my text. So my selector would be, let's say, the P tag. My property would be the color of the text. My value would be red. I hope that was understandable. Cool. Now there are three ways you can write CSS. One is the inline way, which you can see over here. So P, style, color, yellow. One is the basically head way. So you basically put a style tag inside the head of the HTML document, and then inside that you could put all of your CSS. And then the last is your you make another document itself for CSS, and then you link it in your head in HTML using this link. Now this is the basic example of, so one more thing I have to add over here. The best way of writing CSS is the third way of writing CSS, which is making another document itself. And that is because it's better to make another document itself for CSS, because if you, let's say, only want to change CSS of a document, you at least know where it is. You don't need to see a 2000 you don't have to see a page which has 2000 lines when you could easily see a page which has only 300 lines, right? Okay, great. Now this is a basic example of CSS. So let's say I want to change the color of my h1 tag so to purple. So I've selected my h1 tag, then I have my color property, and then value purple, and I also want to change the font size. So font size, and then I want to change it to 56 pixels. Now for image, I want to have a border color to the image, and then yeah, so I've basically implemented a border color, and then I have increased the width of the border to 3 pixels. So this is the way you could style your div in any way. This is a very common style to plan your div or a span. Normally people add images in the span because they want their images to be in line with their text sometimes. Then this basically colors the div black. This basically whatever text is in the div, that will become black, because color is a text property. It basically only changes the color of the text. Then font size of the text would become 23 pixels. Width of the div will become 50%. That means it will only cover half of your page. Then height will become 75%. That means it will only cover 3/4 of your page. Then you have background color. So the whole div's background color will become orange. And then you have border. So the div will have a border of 5 pixels solid red. Solid means that it will be it won't be a dotted border, but like a solid border. Like there won't be any dots in it. It'll be a straight line. So let's just copy and use this in our main.html. So we do have a div right here. We have two divs in span. In fact, so I'll just convert this to a span instead of a div. And now I'm gonna just make another CSS file. So style.css. So .css is the same as .html. It's an extension for a CSS file. So whenever you're making a CSS file, make sure it has a .css extension to it. So yeah. And then I'm gonna paste this code. But right now, if I paste this code, will my thing still work? Nothing really happened. And that was because even though I pasted and made this sheet, I have not linked it with my main.html, right? So the way to link it is go inside your head tag, write link, and then just enter. It'll open your link tag, and then inside href, write style.css. Basically provide the path of your CSS file. And then now reload, and voila. So our text is black, or we have a solid red border, and our font size is also our font size is also 23 pixels, and our width of the div is 50%, height is 75%. But over here, the height, the div didn't take that height because it took the height of the text inside it. Now, why didn't every also change the color to black, and why did it remain, this red? And that was because your children properties always take over your parental properties. That means if I've added a this is my parent properties. So my div has all of these properties, but my span has this property. So my div is like all of these properties are my parental properties. But then after these parental properties were applied to this text, my span applied this property to every, which is the child property. Now, since this property was added after the parental property, every's color is still red. I hope that was understandable. Okay, great. Now, our span did not have any image because this image does not exist because it's just an image URL. So let's add an image URL. So screen, I have an image right here. Screenshot 15.png. Perfect. Let's see. is the background URL screenshot 15. We forgot to put inverted commas. And as you can see, it's very small here, but there is some kind of an image behind it. So now this image is over here because we have a span also around our every, so that's why the image came over here. Then we have a span around oh wait, this is supposed to be a div and this is supposed to be a span. I changed it wrong. Yeah. Now as you can see, it has like both the spans have an image behind them. So yeah, that's how you put styles. There are 3 ways of adding color. One is color orange. So these are very normal bright colors, the one which you normally see in every, so that you have like a proper orange, you have all of these colors. So but they're very specific colors, they're not, and like very few colors are there in this way. So we have red, blue, green, orange, and yeah, there are a lot of colors, but they're not as many. And then the second way is basically to write the RGBA code. So this stands for the red component, this stands for the green component, and this stands for the blue component of the color. So, and the last part is writing a hexadecimal code, which you normally get through any color picker software, website with them. Now in VS Code, you can also do it by just changing it on this gradient thing, and then as you can see over here, you get the RGBA code. You get the RGBA code, you get the hexadecimal code, you get several codes which you could use. Okay. Now we come to classes. So what if you want to put the same formatting to an H1 tag and an H2 tag, but you don't want to write the code again and again because you want to minimize the amount of lines you use. The way to go about that is by basically assigning a class to both H1 and H2 tag, both of those tags, and then basically providing that class with that formatted text, with that formatting CSS code. So classes are basically identifiers, the way we identified tags before. So over here we identified tags, just that way we could identify classes. They can be used to perform actions with or style different incidences of the same tag. Okay, so over here, as you can see, div class XYZ content, div class. And then to basically get this class, you need to, in your CSS file, you basically put dot and then the class name, and then you write the CSS code. So now any object which has class XYZ will have color, will have the text color black, and any object which has the class ABC will have the text color green. So now let's once perform it ourselves. So let's say BR. Oh, I'm just gonna put a lot of breaklines first. Okay, let's have one H1 tag which says student, students of JPIS, and then an H2 tag, belief that everyone should be made. Gonna copy the same. Now, in my H1, I want to put a class of A. Let's see. In my H2, I want to put the class of B. In my H1, I want to put the class of C. In my H2, however, I want to put the class of A again. In my H1 over here, class of B. In my here class of C. Now I can obviously not use identifiers as H1 over here. I can't use the tag H1 in my style.css because I want this H1 to be formatted differently from this H1. Now, to do that, I am gonna use the class system. So for every component which has class A, I want the color to be purple. For every component which has class B, I want the color to be green. For every object that has class C, I want the color to be red. Okay, now to do that, first save the file. .a. So that's how I got the class. So dot basically tells the computer that okay, anything after this is basically the name of a class. So color equals to purple. Dot B, color equals to green. Dot C, color equals to red. Okay. Now let's see. And voila, we have we have H1 in purple, which had class A. This had class B. This had class C. This had class A again, B again, and C again. Okay. Now we just discussed two of the identifiers, which was tags and the other was classes. Now, previously I told you guys that we have another identifier which is called ID. Now, IDs are basically some things which is unique to every component. So one component cannot have, two components cannot have the same ID. Like for example, I can't give H1 over here the same ID as H2. And that is where the difference between classes and IDs stay. I could give the same, I could give two different objects the same class. As you can see over here, I gave this H1 and this H2 the same class, but I cannot give both of them the same ID. So I could only give my ID A to H1, but I cannot give the same AID to H1 over here too. So I'll have to give an ID called B over here, let's say. Okay. And the way to basically identify IDs over here is by using hash. So hash A is basically the name of an ID. So over here dot A is the name of the class, and over here hash A is the name of an ID. And then parenthesis, and then let's say I want to change the color of anything which is ID A to black. Now, what do you think will be the color of this text? It has class A and ID A. Now, class A tells this object to change the color of this text to purple, but the ID A tells this object to change the color of this text to black. Now, what will happen? Let's see. It changed to black. That means ID is more powerful than a class. So ID can anytime overrule whatever the class says. So this is the CSS hierarchy. So tag, your class can anytime overrule your tag, but your ID can overrule your tag, and your class. So over here, as you can see, this is the same example I gave before. So it has both class and ID, but this class tells the color to change to white, but this ID tells the color to change to this hexadecimal code. So this H1 would definitely change to. Oh, and wait, this also has an inline text code which tells it to change to this hexadecimal code. So let's see what happens now. Wait, let me remove all of this. We have H1, and then let's add this in our style. Cool. So this is a pink color, this is a gray color, and this is a white color. Let's see what happens. Where did it go? H1. Okay, now you might be able to see. Oh, I've not written any text between it, which is why you can't see anything. Guys, sometimes these kind of errors happen. Okay, so students of unified belief. Okay. here. So as you can see, the color changed to pink, and that's because your inline text would always, your inline CSS would always have the highest, uh, like, uh, you know, hierarchical power. So even if you have an ID over here which says something else, your inline CSS would take over that power and would basically implement its own, because that was a parental code, this is a child code, and child code is always um, overpowers the parental code. Okay, now we have padding and margins. Now padding basically is something which happens inside the object, whereas margin is something that happens outside. So yeah, I'll just show you how this works. So I have a div, and inside this I have things written, and then I want to add padding over here. Padding of, this is 0 pixels right now, and a margin of style padding of 0 pixels, margin of 0 pixels too. Okay, so I have this div right here. Now I want the space between this line, the border line, and my text to increase. That's where I use the padding. So over here now, I'm gonna increase my padding to 30 pixels. As you can see, the thing increased. Now I want my space between the border and this H1 text over here to also increase. And since it's outside this div, I'll use my margin tag. So I want to now increase my margin to 20 pixels. And as you can see, this has applied a space around all around it, which is why it's also shifted to the right a bit, because it has added 20 pixels of space on the left side too and on the right side too. So yes guys, now you've learned how to change the color of your text, the background of your text, the background of your div, the padding, font size, color, width, how to add borders. There are a lot of things like hover effect, position, line, text decoration, size, etc. And there's so many things in CSS. And obviously, I can't teach you all of it in one class in 60 minutes. And so, please do search up online. There are so many resources like W3 schools and so many YouTube tutorials which could help you a lot in learning more about CSS. And CSS is honestly a very fun tool to play with. You can do a lot of fun stuff with it. And so just try to experiment with it. Just make your creativity flow and just have fun with it. Thank you so much, guys. It was great teaching you all. And yeah, hope you guys had fun. And also, guys, please do not forget to click on the link in the description box below. And please donate to our campaign. This is all for the best. Small initiative like ours um, can basically help save our country from going into a whirlwind of damage, and yeah, basically saving so many people. Even the smallest of the smallest donation, like 200 rupees, would basically pile up to become a huge big number like 30 lakh rupees. So please donate to us and help our cause. Thank you so much, guys.